Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dolf Gielen, Director for Innovation and Technology at IRENA. We're going to have the panel now on the fully renewable city and low-carbon city. We have four distinguished panelists for this session, and may I please invite them to join here on the podium. We have Juliette Daniels, who is the city's manager for CDP, responsible for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And as you probably know, it's an organization that works with the cities on monitoring and disclose their environmental impacts. We have Christine Lins. Christine is the Executive Secretary of REN21, the Renewable Energy Policy Network for the 21st century. And we have Dr. Wilfried Wienhold, who is the Senior Vice President, Business and Strategy Development at Siemens, now responsible for Egypt, but with a distinguished history in developing the urban portfolio at Siemens. And Oliver Knight, who is Senior Energy Specialist at the World Bank, where he's working on a number of energy topics and also on urban planning. So that was a brief introduction. You haven't seen any PowerPoints yet this morning, I heard, so we're going to change that and show you a few slides. But I'll first start. I'll ask each of the panelists to make a 4 or 5 minutes statement on their perspective on this issue. Then I will open the floor for questions from the room, and we'll try to wrap this up in around 50 minutes. As Oliver is the only one who doesn't have slides, we decided that he will open with his statement. So Oliver, please, over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon. I think we're just into the afternoon now. So yeah, I'm from a unit in the World Bank called SMAP, which is the Energy Sector Management Assistance Program. Quite a long title. We've been around for quite a long time, since the 80s oil crises, and we're essentially the donor-funded unit that carries out and supports all the technical assistance in the energy sector in the World Bank. Behind a lot of those studies is SMAP money, and behind that is quite a large collection of donors. So we do a lot of work on, in fact, all our work is on sustainable energy and has been for quite a while. And in particular on the urban side of things, we focus very much on energy efficient cities. And our work up to now has been mainly focused on helping municipal authorities to understand their energy use. And so what I mean by that is the energy use that local governments, city governments have under their control. So that would be their buildings, sometimes it's water, transport, street lighting, and that kind of thing. And we help them to benchmark their performance against other cities. We have quite a large database now of city performance indicators. And very quickly, using some key performance data, we can help them understand, where do they sit in relation to peer cities? So if you're Nairobi, you might be interested in how you compare to Kampala or Dar es Salaam, for example. And then we can quickly identify areas that they might make quite quick investments in. So that's the work we do. I guess the point I wanted to start out with, and I know it's come up a bit already, but in this topic, we're focused on 100% renewable cities, and whether or not that's possible or not, and I certainly believe it is. I think the key thing that will enable it to be possible is energy efficiency as a starting point. If you don't press down on the energy use and the energy conservation, energy efficiency in the first place, achieving that 100% goal will be much, much harder. Two areas that we're going to kind of move into going forward. One is looking much more at buildings, zero carbon buildings, and how we can really start to push those standards with our clients so that clients are really adopting best practice, maybe looking to push the envelope technologically. In particular for warm and hot climates, how can you achieve, as we heard earlier, how can you achieve buildings that have very good performance in the context of increasing demand, and also cross-sectoral linkages. Within the World Bank, we're very lucky that we have sectors looking at urban issues, water issues, waste issues, and so the question is how can we join some of that up? And in the context of this forum, I think that's quite relevant. So just to come to renewable energy, 2 points I wanted to make there. I think, in the work that I've done and some of my colleagues have done, we see real opportunity for point source generation from waste, from water, water sewage treatment, waste to energy, and quite a few of our clients are talking to us who are interested in investments relating to that. In particular, often solves more than one problem. With waste, of course, if you can turn that into an energy stream, and with water sewage treatment, again, if you can create additional revenue for loss-making utilities that are doing that, these are things that can actually solve multiple problems. I work a lot in Pakistan, and there you've got a real problem with circular debt. So utilities like water treatment utilities are not paying their bills, but if they could use a little less electricity or no electricity and be actually contributing electricity, you would eliminate some of those recurring circular debt problems. The other area for renewable energy that we're seeing a lot of interest, and this is probably growing rapidly right now, probably the most rapidly in terms of the RE portfolio, is distributed rooftop solar. And I think that's kind of broken down into 3 areas. Business to business, so the idea of coming along and installing solar PV on a business's premises without net metering, but just reducing the amount that they take from the grid. That's particularly appropriate where net metering isn't established yet. Grid connected, where there is net metering, so allowing the sale backwards and forwards. And then also PPAs, and we've done, IFC is the private sector arm of the World Bank, did quite a groundbreaking project a few years ago in Gujarat, whereby they took a whole bunch of rooftops, so identified rooftop space, and then bid that out in conjunction with the utility company in 2 5-megawatt chunks. And so they then had firms come in to manage a portfolio of rooftops, install the PV, and then do that under 20-year PPA. So kind of quite a lot of different business models we see will probably emerge under rooftop solar. I guess I just wanted to conclude with 2 points, and these are maybe a bit more personal points, but I think there's I would say that there's insignificant recognition of the simple. We've had a lot of talk already about quite high-tech solutions and how can we redesign air conditioning, etc. Well, some of the more obvious solutions are shading, orientation, and really trying to get the basics right will help you a lot more when you're trying to talk about the high-tech solutions. Get the basics right is really pretty easy, and actually, if you go back over over hundreds of years, these technologies have existed. They're not complex, but they actually make a big difference. And then the final point I'd like to make is just the importance of regulation, getting regulation right and enforcing regulation. I think when you're talking about energy efficiency in particular, regulation is one of the key drivers to getting both investment and to making sure that what you want to happen actually does happen. And that's a huge challenge, but it's clearly an area that needs a lot of attention. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Let's move to our second panelist, Wilfred Wienholz. So he will talk about the urban program at Siemens. I understand it covers 100 cities now, and we'd like to hear what you find out, what works in terms of energy solutions for cities.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. When starting this presentation, quickly, just want you to just remember your last success you had. Just for a moment, remember this last success you had. And you might want to agree, or want to consider that there are two elements which are very important to have that success. It is knowledge and experience, and also your personal investment that you have brought in to get that done. Today, we talk about cities and CO2 abatement and zero carbon, and to get there, across the world, we see when talking to cities that these cities have ambitious targets. The big question that's always coming up is, what do you want me to do to get it done? And this is where knowledge comes into play as well as experience. Typically, it is connected with infrastructure. You ask about what can I improve or what can I achieve when installing the infrastructure. I can also ask for the economic impact on that. Do I create jobs? Is it economically viable? What is the environmental impact in doing so? Exactly what Oliver also mentioned in his introduction. And then is also how quickly can I get this done? And usually, when it's get into technologies, and this what happens is when we asked as Siemens in the master planning phase, what's feasible, how much does it cost, and which technologies can I apply? And what we see today is not rocket science. What we see today is a question for experience. What is it that works? What is it that helps my city to improve and to be in an economic, competitive environment successful? And these 70 technologies that you see around transport, energy, and buildings always target at a very simple thing. How can I reduce CO2? What is the impact on air quality? And how many jobs do I create? And I'm very surprised when I was talking to the cities of the recent 10 years, the first question was always, how many jobs do I create? Economical viability, it's a very important point. And how can technology contribute to this? And we have done that over the past 4 or 5 years with different cities. They sum up to 15 now. We have another 40 in the pipelines. And I don't want to share about all of these, but just one example, which is in Vienna. And the thing is today, to get there, to get from where we are to the ambitious goal of CO2 abatement, the cities start somewhere. It's not that they start in the nowhere. They have technologies in place. Like you see in Vienna on the left-hand side, they are already implementing technologies. They have technologies in mind, which we call here the accelerating technologies, which help them even more to abate CO2. And finally, the experimental, where you are not sure, should I do it now or should I wait a little bit more until the technology become more mature. In the end, if you see those 3 technologies and you see those axes on the X, the kilogram CO2 equivalent per euro over the lifespan you are considering, and on the y-axis the PM10 reduction. And these bubbles here, they clearly show what Vienna is doing with their current implementing technologies helps them a lot in both regards and create jobs, about 40,000 full-time equivalents. The bubbles also indicate the size of the investment that need to be done. So they all of a sudden now can compare. They can compare of what they do today and how to get there in the future coming up in terms of implementing technologies. So what you do is you unfold the entire complexity of technology over time in specific steps of what to do step by step. And you also explain what is the impact on jobs. And you see here this red one, which is about 80,000 full-time equivalents, is the Vienna Accelerated. So they now have the confidence that they can achieve their target of 35% CO2 abatement, as you see here in this graph. And this is what I would like to close these 5 minutes about, is when you want to be successful as a city to achieve your targets, it is about knowledge and experience. And to put these things together in a way that you know what these technologies can be helpful for, and is what I see as the biggest paradigm shift today, is to use master planning and use in this master planning phase the expertise on technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. Let's move to Christina Linz. REN21 has done a number of studies in the past on local policy frameworks and their impact on renewables, including cities. Please, Christine.
Thank you very much, Dolf. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, question, is it realistic to talk about 100% renewable energy cities? I would second Oliver's opinion. I think it is realistic, but only under the condition that we really also look at the demand side and do not only focus on renewable energy supply. And of course, to a certain extent, it is an inspirational goal, but what is good and what we find in the course of our research is that there are more and more cities engaging in this trajectory. REN21 is publishing an annual report on the global development of renewable energy in electricity, heating and cooling, and transport. And this report also has a focus on highlighting some of the initiatives around the world evolving on the local and regional level, because we see that these constituencies in many parts of the world have very ambitious targets. And so when you look at the local level, you see more and more emergence of integrated renewable energy policies, focusing on, as the colleague from Siemens has also portrayed, on buildings, on the industrial side, and on the transport sector. It is encouraging to see that there are more and more emergence of such targets that cities have put themselves, that very often they then combine them with climate programs and eco-development programs. And we see that very often cities are more ambitious than the national governments. I think also one of the things that you see in the Covenant of Mayors, this initiative that the European Commission has launched a couple of years ago for Europe, and that is now going international with the launch of the Covenant of Mayors for Africa, for example, at the COP. And of course, we also see that city authorities, public authorities, have a huge influence on citizens by showing the example, by focusing on green procurement and on just supporting renewable energy investments in their constituencies. We have a situation in the world that roughly 1/3 of electricity is generated from renewables. That is an average. We have more and more countries with really very high shares of renewables. And I would say that the 100% renewable city is probably does not only mean that all the energy or the electricity is generated in the city, but could also, of course, facilitate then green power purchase, so that also electricity generated outside is taken care of this. And when you hear, just yesterday, I found it striking at one presentation of a German representative when he mentioned that last year on the 23rd of August, over 80% of Germany's electricity supply was generated with renewables. So we see that there is really some energy transition going on in many countries, and of course that also has a spillover effect on the cities and on their consumption patterns. However, we must not forget, especially when we look in the built environment, that we still have a huge need for energy to heat and to cool our buildings. And there, when you look at the global figure of only 8% renewable share, you see that there is still a long way to go. And when you notice that half of the world's final energy consumption is used to generate heating and cooling, then we see that still lots needs to happen. We have examples of district heating systems with biomass and solar in the more Nordic countries. But also China is being a world leader in the generation of solar hot water with thermosiphon systems. We also have examples of cooling. This is the world's largest solar cooling system in Singapore. which has about 4,000 square meters of flat plate solar thermal collectors to generate cooling. So there are lots of possibilities out there, or also more remote installations, an example of a coffee and banana drying facility in Zimbabwe, where we see that these installations in communities also generate income and provide business opportunities. A word on transport, because of course that's an important element in any city strategy. We see increase of renewables. The share of renewables in road transport is about 3.5%, but there again you see that there is still a long way to go. But actually, when you look at the figures coming from China, when you see that China was home to 97% of the two-wheelers that are operating in the world, and 80% of the world fleet of electric buses, then you see that there is some development there. And actually, I was quite struck by the Bloomberg figures I read earlier this week, where Bloomberg mentions that at the end of 2015, we reached 1 million sold electric vehicles in the world, and it took us about 20 years to get to the 1 million. And their forecast is that it will take us 18 months to get us to the next million of cars. And then when we look at wheel-to-wheel greenhouse gas emissions, we clearly see that e-mobility, especially with electricity generated from renewables, has the lowest emissions and is definitely the future to go to. And a last word on technology. I think that the technologies that we use right now is probably also not the most appropriate for future needs. Our cars nowadays have a top speed of 170 kilometers per hour. We probably just in the city need a limit of 50 or 60. They accelerate quite quickly, could also do with a bit less probably. A range of 600 kilometers is not really needed. The majority of driving happens on a much smaller scale on a daily basis. Our cars consume roughly 8 liters in 100 kilometers. We can also do with much less CO2. And the big question is whether it's really worth carrying around 2,000 kilos of steel for the mobility of often just one person. So probably the future of technology has to be a different one, which most likely will look like this. And I'm going to leave you with this image. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christine. Finally, we'll hear from Juliet Daniels, who is the city's manager for CDP, but also who worked in the past on the greening of London City. So please, over to you.
Thank you very much. So yes, I'm here from CDP, and I'd like to just answer the question posed by the last panel as well, in terms of what can cities do. They can measure, they can track their progress, they can report. It's really vital, and that's what CDP helps non-state actors to do. So CDP is a sustainability reporting platform for companies. That's probably what we're best known for supply chains, cities, states and regions as well. We actually provided more than half of the data to the UNFCCC's Nazca portal for COP21. So there's a huge amount of data and pledges and commitments that we're collecting and feeding into the international discourse. So just to give you a sense of the scale, we had, in 2015, 822 institutional investors worth around $92 trillion in assets under management who required companies that they invest in to report through CDP to be transparent about their sustainability because they believe it's so important. More than 5,000 companies reported. Also more than 300 cities reported, required by no one, but because they saw value in it and because they felt that this was something useful for them to do. So, in our 2015 analysis of the data that was reported, we posed the question, can cities quit fossil fuels? Spoiler alert, yes they can. We think they can. So really what we wanted to look at here was from the cities that are reporting to us, who were the leaders, what were the ambitious targets doing in terms of setting actions at the city scale on renewable energy. And so here's just a snapshot of some of the targets reported by cities already setting renewable energy targets. Now, these mostly relate to electricity generation, and there is also the separate issue of space heating and transport to be considered, which is also covered by their actions. And you can see that some of them are actually aiming to the top. They're aiming for 100% already. So Aspen pledged this last spring and have actually already achieved their 100% electricity target since then. They and Santa Monica are both using their community collective purchasing power to move the market and to buy in green electricity. Of course, this can't be done everywhere with the current capacity that we have, but they're showing a strong signal of what they can do. San Francisco took a very collaborative approach, and they actually convened a task force to look at the options for the city. So they brought in the private sector, they brought in the civil society, and they said, what options do we need to look at here in order to achieve 100%? And Stockholm's got a hugely ambitious plan. They aim to be fossil fuel free entirely from transport, from space heating, from electricity generation, the works, by 2040. And they're already buying green electricity, but they've got a huge raft of measures that they're working collaboratively on with their citizens in order to achieve this target. And you can see even these lower targets, there's a huge amount of effort and collaboration going into achieving them. So one of the things we did in our 2015 questionnaire was ask cities what their current electricity generation mix was, where they were getting the fuel for electricity generation. And of the 308 included in this analysis, 162 cities told us what their energy mix was. Right top of the list there, you can see Reykjavik. So just to give you a breakdown of the colours, the red means no fossil fuels, and the grey and the black, rather predictably, is fossil fuels. So Reykjavik's up there with 100% fossil fuel-free electricity generation already today. They don't need to set a 100% target, it's already there. The vast majority of that's coming from hydropower, with a large chunk from geothermal as well. And now you might say, well, Iceland's a very unique case. Its geography means that they're much more set up for renewables than the rest of the world. And that might be right, but they haven't got to 100% and stopped. They've actually got a very ambitious program now with a business action pledge looking at reducing emissions among businesses in Iceland through the city government. And they're also looking at reducing their transport emissions because that is still a big issue for them, moving away from fossil fuels for transport. So here's just a little snapshot of regionally what the energy mix was looking like from the city reporting. So you can see actually that Latin America's in the lead there, with just about 3/4 of their electricity in the cities coming from renewable sources already, which is massive. This is in a large part to hydropower. Europe came up next with still more than half. I mean, I must stress, this is just a snapshot of the cities that reported, and there was huge variation. There were some leaders in each of the regions in terms of what they were doing on renewable energy already. And I think one of the really interesting things about looking at renewables on a city level is a lot of cities don't have the power to change what their energy mix is, but they do have convening power and influencing power at the national level. And actually, a lot of the cities that have lower energy mixes are still doing fantastic things when it comes to pushing the game on renewables. So who's leading the way? We weren't really surprised to see there were some amazing front runners like Stockholm, like Reykjavik in the picture. But what we were really shocked about was actually there's a lot of leaders. So out of the 162 cities that reported their electricity mix, 35% of them are already getting 3/4 or more of their electricity from renewable sources already. That's not a best practice case study, that's a movement already. So just to let you know that we're just about to start for the 2016 cycle of reporting for CDP. We're hoping to get even more cities reporting this year, their sustainability, being transparent about what they're doing. So come and talk to me by all means if you are interested in reporting or if you know of other cities that might be. And let's make 2016 even more triumphant for non-state actors than it was in 2015 with the success of COP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliet. Let me very quickly try to summarize what we've heard, at least what I got from these interventions. First of all, energy is very important for cities. There is energy efficiency and renewable energy, and both need to be combined. Cities can quit fossil fuels, and in fact, they're often more ambitious than the national goals. And this is not rocket science. There's a package of around 70 technology options that can result in a significant improvement. And heating, cooling, transport, rooftop systems, and buying of green electricity fit into that. Renewables and climate are important for cities, so jobs and economic growth is an important driver, but at the same time, cities are very important for the global agenda on renewables and climate. There is a number of front runners, and they have shown that it is possible in practice, and there can be significant learning from this best practice. And it's developed and developing countries where this change is happening. You need to take into account the starting point of the local infrastructure and the economic situations. Regulation is important and standards. At the same time, reporting systems can help to point out where the opportunities are. And there's more attention needed for business models to make this work. For example, bundling of rooftop systems, and to deal with debt problems for waste to energy and maybe also for district heating. So that is what I captured from this, and now I'd like to open it up to the floor for your questions, please. Please. There's a mic coming, just a moment.
Hi. Yeah. Hi, my name is Silvia Scudero, working for the UEI Partnership Dialogue Facility in Germany. I have a question for Juliet. It would be, you were explaining that cities do this process freely, but I asked myself, what really incentivizes cities to do all this effort to disclose all this information? Because developed cities, I can imagine they have the resources and so on, but maybe you said you work in Africa as well. How do you manage to convince them to do this, given that they lack financial resources maybe to do this, and maybe they don't even have the data themselves? So what incentivizes them?
Well, it's a great question. I think it varies, actually. There's a range of motivations for cities. I think one thing that helps them to start on the process is that it's obviously free to be involved, and they get quite a lot of free support from CDP to help them through the process. It gives them a standardized approach that they know other cities are doing in terms of looking at what data other cities are collecting. It gives them access to analytics, so they're able to look at how other cities are performing in terms of the data points that we're asking for. And I think not only is it useful for them in terms of going through the process and realizing what data they need to start collecting or what things they need to start being aware of, many of them say they find it very useful in terms of matchmaking with other cities that are dealing with the same kinds of issues. So it may not be that they're within the same region, but they might have the same GDP or be of the same rough size or have the same climate type. And they're able to see through the analytics that CDP provides to all cities who they need to talk to team up, to share ideas. So it does act as a kind of matchmaking, I suppose, service between cities. And then we have the company data as well, which we're starting to bring closer and closer together to the city data, so that we can really see where are the overlaps in terms of investment opportunities from private enterprises into city infrastructure. So I think there's a lot of drivers for cities, and I don't underestimate it can be very difficult to find the time if you don't have a dedicated environment team. But we're finding that they do still find it useful.
Okay.
My name is Bahaj again from University of Southampton, UK. I got a question related to actually a guy from Siemens. You presented very good ways of thinking about what happens in cities, emission reductions, pollution reduction in terms of PM2.5 and PM10, and the last bit is about jobs. And this is really what is driving quite a lot of the cities in the UK to think about. The question I had is related to how much investment did Vienna had to make sure that they address the air pollution as well as the refurbishment options? And is this affordable by other cities?
You know, the investment, what I've shown there, was ranging from 1 billion up to 10 billion over a period of 10 to 15 years to be invested. Where Vienna is today, they felt quite comfortable with their investment budget. And of course, it is always this big question, I have a limited budget, what is it that I can do? We all have the aspiration to do everything. The budget gives limitations, and what we have seen by our experience from the technology point of view and the job point of view, they get an additional opinion on how this money is best invested. And they have a strong interest in that because they have to be open to their citizens, right? They have to tell them, look, we invested 5 billion into this, but this is the advantage you get out of that. So is the exact figures, that was not disclosed to us, but the scenarios we opened for them were quite reasonable. And they say, yeah, we feel comfortable with that, but even more, with what they were doing, they got a proof point that they are doing the right migration path to get there. And when you come to that point, then it's usually almost always a question of credibility and trust. And the credibility is usually created from things that you do by your own. So while we talk about the cities, how we can help them, or not we, but the technologies can help them, they also ask us, what is your program? So, for example, as we cut our CO2 footprint by half by 2020 compared to 2014, while we invest 100 million into energy efficiency programs, these are points. Or even like when third parties like the CDP was just ranking us 100 points out of 100 in their indicator. This shows there is somebody that this is not just blue sky strategy that is developed, but is something that is resulting into tangible results. And this is what they are most asking for. These tangible results. It's less a question of the budget. The budget will be there if it is reasonable and can be well communicated to the citizens as well. Maybe that to answer your question.
I guess what I was trying to think about is that there is a direct link between number of deaths and air pollution from PM2.5 and PM10. But there is nobody responsible for that direct link. Neither the central government nor the local government. But the figures could be quantifiable to actually do that.
Yeah, but allow me to say that you're touching here a very important point, and that is the availability of data. And that we are in an ongoing learning process, we from a private sector as well as the cities, to understand how these KPIs are connected to actions. That's unclear today. At least there is, I wouldn't say unclear. It is, as always, we have many options to do so. And the cities learn, and believe me, from those 15 cities we did, most of them were sweating a lot to contribute with the data, because it was the very first time for them to see, oh, I have to collect these data, I have to put them in a data repository, I need to make them available. And then to elaborate on these goals is one of the most important topics for them.
Christine, you also wanted to respond?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. I'm coming from Austria, so on the city of Vienna, I think what is particular there is one of the few European cities which actually faces quite some growth. So there is the need for building lots of new housing, and so there is 2 years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, the city has created an energy agency, so a knowledge hub for energy in the urban environment, promoting energy efficiency, promoting renewable energy, both in the field of refurbishment, because it's also about densification of the urban space, and also for the development of new strategies. And I think that is a very important point, because I think what all the panelists have shown, there are lots of different options out there, but the key of the future will be on how to integrate them. And the planning aspect, the aspect of planning the urban space in a CO2 zero CO2 or low carbon way is going to be the big challenge, and that does not only require technology, but it requires also lots of capacity building with civil servants, and that's why also City of Vienna is now involved in an EU project where they work with other cities. I think it is Paris and Amsterdam and Lyon and Istanbul, if not mistaken, to just share this capacity and also share some exchange on how these sustainability aspects can be integrated into urban planning, because I think for me this is going to be the key on getting the built environment, getting the transport sector with all the public transport options, etc., get this together to really reflect these climate commitments.
And Vienna is also quite unique in that there is a waste incinerator more or less in the center of town, connected to a district heating system, designed by an artist. It's the only waste incinerator I know in the world that is in fact a tourist attraction. Okay. Please.
It's a little bit of a low-brow question, but we are two believers on the panel that 100% renewables are possible in cities. When do you think this becomes sort of a mainstream phenomenon, not something that's exotic or kind of just a small group? I mean, are we talking like 2030 or 2050? When does 100% renewables become the standard?
Okay, I'd say you're going to see some substantial. I'm just throwing it out there because why not? But I would say that you'll see some interesting examples by 2025. That would be my prediction.
I would say a range might be reasonable. What I see more is that it will happen at that very moment in time when the total economic value of such a solution outperforms any other. Because it is not just being CO2 neutral. It is about what does it cost, how do I get there, do I create jobs, is it economically viable? So I would love to give a disconnected answer, and just saying it is maybe 2025 to 2035. It very much depends on the economic impact. And from my experience, what I've seen with the cities so far, they have a lack in economists being able to assess this total economic value. Because you have political impact, you have social impact, you have environmental impact, you have economic impact. All these need to be considered. And then it cannot be a perfect system, but I haven't even seen a first trial to get there, that we can really compare solutions that come into the market, which gives also the possibility for new things coming up. And like we see from the World Bank, setting up KPIs is a first step into that direction when it comes into funding of projects and the like. But we need to go beyond that. And then it might be very reasonable to have this sooner than later.
I think we will see it happen earlier in the electricity sector, but when it comes to the heating and cooling options and the transport sector, I think it will take us by mid-century to get there. So I think it's very good and ambitious to have these front runners that are already today committing to these high targets. we also see that these are the cities in the more affluent countries, and I think that the immediate issues that we also have at stake is that we still have lots of people also in cities that do not yet have access to energy, and this is something also that we need to tackle. And there are renewable solutions out there, small scale, be it solar home systems, PV, rooftop, biomass, etc., modern biomass. But this is important to really get that right, and hopefully these front runners, and also with Master City here in the region, will be inspirational, so then others will then follow.
Yes,
Yeah, so totally agree with Christine, and I think also we need to get the finance right for the rapidly urbanizing, developing cities, because that's where we're going to see huge growth in energy generation and uptake of electricity in the future. And we need to make it affordable for that development to be renewable and sustainable and not dependent on fossil fuels as we move forward. So I think that's a big challenge, and we started to see steps towards that at the last COP, and hopefully we'll continue to this year. But I think that's going to be, in terms of size of population and impact, a big factor.
so we're running late. I would like to close this session and thank very much the panel for their input. And if there are any more questions, then I think they'll be around, so you can have a bilateral. So again, can I have a round of applause for the panel?